So it's hard to believe that just a month and a half ago, around April 10th to April 20th, the fear and greed index was at a 4 and the NASDAQ had plunged over 25% and everyone was afraid and scared. And now we consistently see market strength across the US market and the stock market. And I wanted to show you all today kind of how that strength is relating to one of our more riskier trades, which is investing in Quantum, because Quantum, we have seen sharp sell-off multiple times in Quantum stocks going back to January and then during the Trump tariffs. So where are we now is the question, and that's what we're going to get into. So we're going to look at 3 stocks today. We're going to look at QBTS, D-Wave. We're going to look at BigBear.Ai, and we're going to look at SoundHound, all stocks that I think are looking really interesting in the charts. And let's jump right in. I wanted to share this because this has been floating around for a few days. So Quantum Computing Inc., QUBT, is set to join the Russell 2000 and Russell 3000 indices. The ticker QUBT will be added to all these indices, which means that a lot of funds, mutual funds, ETFs, will automatically be putting in purchases. So some investors are front running their investment in this company and buying now, but you could definitely see a difference starting on June 30th when QUBT is added to the Russell 2000 and Russell 3000. Also, we saw just a couple days ago that the second largest US pension fund bought up D-Wave, Quantum Computing, and DJT. This was a recent headline, and we see that even institutions are buying into Quantum. The market did pretty well today. We saw a considerable amount of strength throughout the day. In the S&P 500, we were up 0.58%. In the Dow, we were up 0.51%, and NASDAQ 0.81%. The Russell had an amazing day at 1.59%, which is a lot of the small cap stocks. And some of the tickers that we cover are in the Russell. And let's take a look at our Quantum watch list. So we see that some of our cybersecurity plays like LAES and ARQQ had a nice day. We see QUBT had a 5% day. QBTS, impressive 3% day. So back-to-back green days on QBTS. NVIDIA, of course, had that 3% day. And our Quantum ETF, it wasn't so long ago that this Quantum ETF was $78 a share. Imagine being able to buy SPY at $78 a share. At one point it was, and it will continue to grow. So as Quantum grows, this ETF will grow as well. So if you're a new investor and you're worried about picking the wrong horse per se, or you want something that gives you exposure to Quantum and some of these companies with some of the risk at least spread out, then the Quantum Defiance ETF is definitely something to look at. You're going to want to look at the composition of that ETF and see if that aligns with your personal investment philosophy and if you agree with how they distribute their fund. We can see there was pretty much good strength through the sector. IonQ looks like it's still struggling to hold that $40 mark, but it did hold. Rigetti finds itself still sitting at a key support. So Rigetti also has so let's take a look at the stock heat map. So we're still seeing a mixed result. When we see so much gray, that just means that it's a little bit flat. So Tesla was pretty flat today. Amazon was pretty flat, but NVIDIA had a beautiful 3% day, maybe a delayed little rally from their earnings. We know that after earnings, the price went up to 143 and then there was sell-off, as is tradition for NVIDIA. We saw the whole semiconductor industry do really well today. AMD had a nice day. Google had some sell-off. There's a lot of scary headlines about Google, which is what is driving the stock down in the current moment. And we saw a little bit of sell-off in big tech. So this is the headline on SoundHound's About page: exceptional voice experiences for every business. SoundHound's independent voice AI platform connects people to brands through customized conversational experiences. And SoundHound is working with different partners. They're in fast food chains. Their financials have looked a little bit better lately. So if we look at we can see that SoundHound earning reports are starting to improve, and they're starting to put up bigger quarterlies. And the stock has not necessarily tracked with this improved income. When the stock was at its all-time high recently, they had reported their best quarterly ever. So let's go look at the SoundHound chart and see what has been happening lately with SoundHound. So we see that in December, just before Christmas, the stock was trading at $25 a share. Since then, there's been considerable sell-off. We've had the whole market sell down to April, where SoundHound made its bottom. So we're seeing a lot of stocks from this April low start to have their uptrend and their rallies. And really the easiest way for us to mark this out is to just connect the bottom of the candles to identify the trend. So as we can see, as SoundHound gets close to the rising support, it tends to like to move up. Our recent price history, we see 1260 as a high for SoundHound, and now we're down here at this $9, $10 level where there seems to be a lot of support for SoundHound. So this looks like a bullish setup where perhaps SoundHound could do something like this in a bull case. In a base case, SoundHound would reject off 11 and kind of hang around this 997. And in a bearish case, it would break trend and it would move down. And it does have some levels of support at $9 and $7.60. The growth story remains intact for SoundHound. So it's still a ticker in that I have my own personal money invested in. And I even have some call options because I believe the stock will start to move up before the next earnings because they're starting to post better financials. Okay, let's take a look at BigBear.Ai. So recently on the channel, I've gone into the company profile and their financials. So instead of doing that today, I just want to look at the chart. And if you're interested in learning more about BigBear.Ai, I'll put up on the screen some of the videos I've done recently so you can go take a look at deeper information. But basically, the story with BigBear.Ai is they're creating technology for a safer and more secure border. And they're working with the government and different agencies to create technology for warfare, for border and homeland security. And they're in a bunch of different things and they wear different hats. They even do some healthcare. And the story of the company is the company struggled financially a little bit. So the stock's been quite volatile. If we look back even all time, we see that Big Bear has been a roller coaster. It's gone up and down and up and down. But what's different lately and what a lot of investors, I think, are realizing is the new CEO, Kevin McKillen, who was in the previous Trump administration and worked directly in Homeland Security, is now the CEO of BigBear.Ai. And that makes you think, you just saw recently Palantir got the big contract with the US government. So can BigBear.Ai get something similar? Can they get a small piece of the pie? Because that could make a big difference for their financials. So let's look at the last month of Big Bear. And we can see that Big Bear, since this April, where most stocks were washed out and selling pretty low, has been in a consistent uptrend. It is currently in a downtrend. As you can see here, it's making lower highs, which would indicate that there is some bearish sentiment on the ticker. We got some confirmation for that today, as we weren't able to hold for and we sold down, and we're actually now needing to amend this rising support. So previously when I've covered Big Bear on the channel, there was a pretty clear rising support where Big Bear had bounced multiple times, but now we actually broke that rising support, and it could signal a trend change or directional change. However, there still is a lot of enthusiasm for Big Bear. There's a lot of investors that are excited about Big Bear. And I think really all it's going to take is just one headline, one article, one new partnership. And I think this stock will absolutely explode. And I think it has the ability to do so. It's done it multiple times in the past. We've seen Big Bear, kind of like Rigetti, once it decides to move, it moves with force. And I'm just going to go back in time a little bit to show you all last time Big Bear was in this $3.79 to $4 area, what happened next. So we were at about a price point of $3.79 prior to the big rally. And we saw in one day a 20% bump. And then just a couple of days later, an 83% bump. And then at the top of this rally, there was a 143% move. So I think a lot of investors and traders are curious, will Big Bear follow suit again? Will there be momentum? Will volume come in? We can take a look at volume. So currently we see that volume has been picking up, which is also a good sign for this rally. And if we're to see a move up in the near future, we'd want to see volume continue building. So D-Wave, this quantum annealing company based out of Canada that's been on this 200% run since earnings, it just continues to impress me. I did not ever expect this from the stock. And as an investor in D-Wave, as someone who went to D-Wave's conference and met the CEO, met their VP, I've interviewed the VP on this channel, I am super impressed with how the stock has been performing. And just a reminder for those who are in the name, if we go back to just this previous earnings, since earnings to today, there has been a 156% move. And unlike some of our other stocks that we've been looking at that have been showing some weakness, we did call that there was potentially a head and shoulders forming, but there has been, it does appear, buying pressure coming in as we've ended green in the ticker a couple times. So this rising support appears to still be intact, and QBTS is trading pretty close to its rising support. So could QBTS do something crazy and retest all-time highs and potentially move through all-time highs and get into the $20 price point? I don't think it's necessarily that far out of the realm of possibilities, because we saw we saw Rigetti. If we look at Rigetti's chart, Rigetti prior to the quantum crash climbed all the way up to $22 before its gap down and major sell-off. So as long as enthusiasm stays and sentiment stays for D-Wave, also, as I've recently covered, D-Wave had a pretty slow month as far as their press releases. They only released 5 in the month of May. On average, they release about 7 press releases per month. So in the month of June, what are we going to hear from D-Wave? The last thing we heard from D-Wave was their wide availability of their Advantage 2 system. So investors are loving what D-Wave is doing. Investors are loving their public relations, their marketing, and they're loving the company. So there's definitely that positive sentiment so far is captured in the chart. So in a bullish case, we could see some sort of move up higher where we retest all-time highs. In a bearish case, if the market changes, macro changes, quantum stocks are risky assets. And as soon as the tone in the market, as soon as risk off becomes a thing, then you're going to see D-Wave and other quantum stocks drop, and here's just some levels. So 15, 13, 12, and we see 11. So you could absolutely see a trend break in D-Wave and it move to the downside in bearish case or bearish conditions. At the current point, with the current trend and the current macroeconomics, it does still look bullish to me that D-Wave might want to go and retest its all-time highs. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. We covered the news, we covered 3 tickers, we went in depth on the price action. If you enjoy content like this, please consider leaving a like or subscribe. Good luck in the market tomorrow.